What is it you want, Barry? What do you want? You want the moon? Just say the word and I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it down.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
Come with me if you want to live.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
The Force will be with you, always.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to both the combined efforts of 20th Century Geek and Stories Out of Time and Space. We are talking about GI Joe, and I'm here with Julian Darius to talk about GI Joe Resolute. Julian, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Yo, Joe, how are you doing?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I'm good. I would say this is like the Dark Joe returns. We're getting a different Joe to the 1987 version. This is a 1 hour animated series. It's a combination of web episodes, I think, put together. And in doing so, it's an hour long third act. That's pretty much how this felt. It goes at a hell of a pace. I think the animation in this is brilliant. But basically, the film starts with a series of attacks on civilian and GI Joe bases and assets. And we find that the Cobra Commander has come back a lot more serious and a lot more aggressive, and is basically promising to destroy parts of the world using a proton laser, proton cannon.
An energy weapon. An
energy weapon. Sense. Yeah, that's fine. I also don't understand his plan, because he's like, I've been asking for money for years to gain power, but I understand that power is better because then you'll give me money. But I'm like, I don't. Where are you? Like, does he go on a shopping trip down, like, to? Why does he need money?
That whole line business doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. So he has a plot that's basically sort of like, I'll have $1 billion. It's all very Dr. Evil. But it then turns into like a series of incredibly violent shorts. A great fight between Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes, and an angry Duke throughout. And a very, very abrupt ending is all we'll say. What are your thoughts on this and on Resolute?
The GI Joe franchise was kind of stagnating for a long time. When this came out. I mean, there had been several attempts to revitalize it. The 80s series sort of lasted longer than Transformers. It came to a close in the early 90s. The comics ended. The animated show had been revived after the movie, and then, ended again under a different production company. And they revised it in the 90s as GI Joe Extreme, and that did not do great. And there had been a couple additional attempts, and none of them really took off. And so for this one, they got Warren Ellis to do the writing. And, he probably was using this to, groom young women who want, unfortunately, so as with everything by Warren Ellis, including some amazing stuff, it's now been tainted. But this was kind of like almost under the radar. It was this kind of like half-assed, GI Joe web series / movie. Clearly, it should have been longer, right? I don't feel like this is a third act. I sort of feel like this is a sort of like hour and a half to 2 hour movie where every single thing has been cut to make it fit a 60-minute range. Right, yes. Exactly. And it kind of has, it's super violent. Everything happens, that you want to have happen. And it sort of is a much darker, more extreme. Now, it's not in any previous continuity. So it does sort of reference the fact that G.I. Joe and Cobra Commander have been after each other for years. That's clearly the case. Although, this time, as you say, Cobra Commander's like, yeah, I'm just going to take over the world much more directly this time. And Duke's like, we're going to kill Cobra Commander. I'm sick of this. It's all a little pat, but outside of the beginning, I think it works for the most part. I think it sort of shows you what a good G.I. Joe movie could be.
No, I agree. I think it is funny how like this film does not come up for breath like once, and it is indeed like it's kind of um I knew it was an hour and watching it, and I was like, okay, that's going to be interesting. How they're going to cram things in, that's still kind of cool. But yeah, the amount of stuff that's in here, that just like the things that there's some stuff that's discussed and not discussed and just happens is insane. Like um, I it's one of those things that I think because of the time scale that it has, it also cuts corners. And those corners kind of feel that that's where this thing should have breathed more. The two biggest for me are it has this island at the beginning, and it's like decommissioned. It's like Cobra Island or whatever it's called, like
Mhm.
decommissioned, big letters.
In
But
theory,
they've
that's the same Cobra Island as in the GI Joe the movie that we talked about.
yeah, but they didn't decommission the missiles, these massive, massive missile things. And it's like, well, it's not decommissioned then. It's kind of acknowledged later on, but not explained. Like where you do need something that's like, well, why didn't this get decommissioned? What you know that needs to almost be a plot point of they didn't do anything with these clearly usable staggerlight or staglite they call them satellite things that go up into the atmosphere. Like this, yeah, there's a real problem with that. And the other one is almost like there's a weird montage when they had this sort of round the table and they goes to go basically it's like go help the admin staff on the ship. And they all sort of there's a little weird montage of like recognizable GI Joe characters leaning over people working at computers.
Mm,
That's kind
mhm,
of like we need an investigation, but it needs to
mm.
happen very, very quickly. So we're going to have like a 3 minute montage that's going to quickly crack us through this.
Yeah, I think all of my problems with this are really based on the pace.
Yes.
The other thing to say about the pace is that Cobra Commander delivers his ultimatum to the UN and says, "You have 24 hours." Now, I think the opening is a little weak just
Mhm.
because it's so fast. You're like, oh, Major Blood is dead. His body has been left at the Lincoln Memorial. Why is that? Oh, here's another mystery. Here's another. And you're just like, when is this movie going to start? Like, I don't
Yeah.
know anything that's going on. Of course, by the end, it all makes sense. Um, but basically, Cobra's decided to make its big move.
Mhm.
They eliminated Major Blood because he was annoying and a problem.
A
And
traitor, they say.
yeah, and so, they attack the flag to take out G.I. Joe and demand that the UN surrender, the world to Cobra Commander and destroy Moscow
Mhm.
just as a demonstration. So, right away, you're like, oh, they're serious this time, right? That's kind of the premise of this movie. It's like, it's G.I. Joe, they're serious this time.
Yeah.
Um, but but unlike G.I. Joe Extreme and these other attempts to kind of make G.I. Joe a little more realistic or a little more adult or a little more violent, these are the classic characters. They're basically in line with the characters who although animated in a very sort of like, early 2000s
Mhm.
style. Lots of jagged lines everywhere. Um, but yeah, I mean, the thing that bothers me is the 24-hour period. I
Mhm.
mean, the movie needs more time to breathe, but it's like you put together a plan and execute that plan in an hour. Everybody transports themselves around the globe.
Instantly.
Nobody's recovering from this attack on the USS Flag. Like it'd be days before you'd even, be ready to do anything after an attack like that. Um, yeah, so the timing of the movie itself is accentuated by the timeline within the movie.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you say about the plot as well. Yeah, because that's it. I think that's the biggest thing. This is so breakneck that you kind of forget the 24-hour thing, but it pops up several times and you're like, oh, yeah. And then you find out they have traveled around the world and you're like, oh, okay. Um,
Multiple times. And
yeah.
it's a
And back as well. Um,
if you're gonna rig a balloon to go into the upper atmosphere, that takes what, 30 minutes?
mm, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. They've got a subsonic jet, which is highlighted that takes them everywhere. Um, one of the things that's the one of the things that sort of is out of lot. Okay, there were two things I have questions about that I think I need from a sort of a let's say a lore perspective.
I got you covered, mate.
Okay, so this is it. The first one is there has there ever or is there supposed to be a potential relationship between Scarlet and Snake Eyes? Because there's a whole
Yes.
okay, good. That I was unsure, but it's there because she obviously chooses Duke, but then she chooses to stay with the unit or with Duke whilst Snake Eyes goes off to fight Storm Shadow. And I was like, okay, is that a thing that's known? But
So Snake Eyes was not as important in the cartoon show in the 80s.
mm,
But in the comic book, Scarlet and Snake Eyes were an item and were
right,
together throughout basically the entire comic. So it's traditional that they have a relationship of some sort. In this movie, it's kind of like Snake Eyes hasn't made his move.
hmm
And, so she wants Snake Eyes to do it. She wants to be with Snake Eyes, but Duke is kind of the one making the move.
the moves.
Uh, but she really wants to be with Snake Eyes. I think
Mm.
that's the way this continuity works that out.
That, I thought that that's there, but I wasn't sure about the let's say the not even the canonical, but like let's say the lore past.
Mm-hmm.
The other one then is still Snake Eyes because he's obviously explored in the films and he's going to become a key factor going forward. Is this thing with Storm Shadow? This thing about the seven punch kind of thing. You have this whole flashback about them being trained and all sort of stuff. And how much of this is new? Is this a retcon? Is this part of the origin? Is this because it obviously ends with them? This is their final fight, as it were. I'm assuming this is obviously one of those episodes. But this thing about being trained and being an orphan and all this other shit, is that all canonical?
Yes and no. I mean, so obviously it's just canonical to this movie,
Mm,
but none of this was in the cartoon. So
right.
basically, what happened is Larry Hama in the comic book um, made Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow basically blood brothers, and he introduced this idea that they had this tattoo from the I Ching on their arm. And at first, that's just been an issue. You don't know what it is, and then basically that little plot point basically takes over the entire comic, um, and becomes
Is
this
that the red thing
huge.
that's shown in the
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
So basically, that's from the Arashikage ninja clan in Japan, and basically in the comic, Storm Shadow is Asian,
hmm
but Snake Eyes is white, and they met in Vietnam during the Vietnam War, and basically Storm Shadow invited Snake Eyes back to Vietnam after the war, and he lost his family. He had nowhere to go, and he went and trained. And then the leader of that clan was indeed killed, um, and in an assassination. And you know, in the comic, it was Zartan who did that. So I mean, and in this movie, it's Zartan.
Mm.
So all of this, basically, all of that Arashikage stuff was stuff that Larry Hama invented in the comic, and basically no version of GI Joe since then has ever not incorporated
No.
because it's
Okay.
it's all like
There.
that was something that people loved,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
It's
um,
become one of those sort of fixed points in the canon of like this is bound to happen. Okay.
yeah.
Because it's funny as well because it comes out of the 80s, which was obsessed with the idea of ninja and this idea of I mean, you even say about one being white, one being, Asian. That's Ryu and Ken from Street Fighter. This is um, the
which
Foot
which
Clan
was
from
ripping off GI
Turtles.
Joe,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh
yeah.
no, yeah, I can see it now. Like they're blood brothers, and that's gone off in that whole story around that. This is the Foot Clan, or the Hand, and like this thing of ninja clans and stuff was a big thing in the 80s and 90s.
One thing that is changed here, I mean, originally there were a bunch of other characters involved, right?
Mm,
There's the soft master, in addition to the hard master, and all those who were part of that clan. Um, but one thing that's changed is that Larry Hama makes Storm Shadow a good guy. So essentially, in the comic, in the sort of like classic version of this story, Storm Shadow was not responsible for that assassination.
mm,
And he then is rehabilitated, Um, and he's kind of blamed for the assassination, but he knows somebody in Cobra did it. And so basically he's joined Cobra as kind of like a double agent, and he becomes a good guy, within a certain number of years in the comic. Um, and that was part of Larry Hama basically saying, there's one Asian character, he's a bad guy, really? And rehabilitating Storm Shadow. So there are different takes on this. So obviously, if this departs from the original or the sort of like beloved lore of the series, it's in keeping Storm Shadow a bad guy. If nothing else, for purposes of telling a 60-minute story.
Yeah,
There's
it's
only,
concise. Yeah, it's concise. I mean, I
the
like the...
seven step technique thing is unique here.
Okay.
That is unique to this. And that's like obviously stolen from kung fu movies and stuff.
I was gonna say, yeah, it felt. That's why I wondered if it was already in there because it felt like this has come from one of those sort of like 70s and early 80s sort of kung fu films. So, okay, that's cool. I mean, it's good. I love the fight. I mean, I was kind of surprised how it ends. It's kind of definitive at the end, and it's kind of shows that like Snake Eyes is the superior fighter. And I was curious, like, oh, okay, is this supposed to kick off, you know, a new series? In which case you've done a bit of a thing where you've killed off one of your characters. Cool, all right, that's fine. But I love the animation. This is great. I like all this kind of stuff that's going on. Snake Eyes attack on the island where he sneaks in. It's the best part of the film, for my opinion, as a segment. He drops down. He's got his glider wings. Comes on, uses his ninja skills, has them hung up, and uses the grenade belt, and like cuts a guy in half. It's all good stuff. Look, it's violent and stuff, but it works well, and I think it's animated incredibly well. So, I do like that whole thing with him and Storm Shadow.
My only problem with it, and I think this movie does so much with a limited budget and a limited time. My only problem with it is that the whole Arashikage plot is totally independent from the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
This is really two movies. One is Cobra Commander and GI Joe, and the other is, oh, there's a little note with the I Ching symbol. That means it's time to, resolve the, Storm Shadow versus Snake Eyes fight, which really is totally inconsequential. You basically have to believe that Storm Shadow said, Cobra Commander's making his big move. It's time to just, wrap this whole series up. I'm going to finally demand that Snake Eyes show up and us to have our final conflict. That's as much as those two plots are connected.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was weird that, like, they say, what's it, Blood is killed off. And then, like, Storm Shadow's managed to put a note down his throat. And I was like, okay. Did he kill him? We know that he was ordered to be killed by Cobra Commander. But, like, Storm Shadow seems to have just taken the opportunity to be like, well, while I'm at it, I might as well finish this off as well. No more play it time for games kind of thing. So, yeah, it's weird, but it's cool. So the other side of things, though, they break into another decommissioned nuclear missile site in Russia that hasn't been decommissioned because the missiles are still there. Lots of people not decommissioning things properly. This is Duke and Scarlet. It's good though. I like it. Again, this is lots of good shooting, and the animation's good. This is where you get, is it Zoltan? You said, like, he comes in as sort of like he's the mercenary, and he's chosen to fully work for Cobra and all this other stuff. So that all is working pretty well. And just like before in the 87, Duke gets injured, and it's going to sort of lead up to this bit. But you've also got, as you said about the films, you've got also, is it Roadblock and who's the other one? There's two of the characters that help him that are sneaking into the island.
One of the weird things about this movie is that Tunnel Rat is in it. And Tunnel Rat attacks the satellite. Tunnel Rat was, he had a few moments in the comic. But he really goes back to the Vietnam War and to, obviously the Vietnamese tunnels, right?
Shockingly,
which were horrific, right?
Yeah.
Why do you have a guy who specializes in that on a GI Joe team in the 80s?
Yes.
never really made a lot of sense. Now, I mean, he's sort of like a star of a comic issue, but he's not a very important character outside of these two movies. It's really strange that he's there. Now, Roadblock kind of is a classic character. I mean, he is from, a couple of years in, but he sort of became a beloved character. Yeah, but some of these other characters are, they're pretty much the standard characters. I mean, they kill Bazooka off screen.
Yeah. Yeah.
They kill Major Blood off screen. Those are sort of like B-listers.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that, like characters that turn up. Like Destro and the Baroness are in it, and I noted that Destro has a Scottish accent in this at points. Um,
But
and
even they get killed.
yeah, oh no, that's what I mean. Like, yeah,
Everybody dies. This
everybody
is like
dies.
balls to the wall. Clearly not intended to have a sequel, right?
No, I mean, this is the Dark Joe Returns. Like, this is like we're ending things. We're really going to sort of wrap things up in an aggressive way. So that shootout with them, I was kind of surprised. And then when it gets nuked, the whole thing, and I'm like, oh wow, they are really like wiping this out. The weird thing where this goes is where this ends up, because everything in it is relatively good. I'm like, cool, the action's good, the story's running at a pace, it's kind of simple and straightforward. I'm fine with that. All right. I wish this was about half an hour longer, just so in between some of the scenes there was discussion going on that would allow me to kind of understand things, or at least let the characters breathe, or show some form of emotion other than like anger or something else.
Or putting together a plan. Those are
the
two modes any character has.
That's it. Like putting some strategy together, doing something that's, discussing things or something. Just give it a bit of depth. But that's not what this is for. But it's this final bit at the end when they find out where Cobra Commander is. And he's had all these bits and pieces. And they find out he's in this town, which I can't remember where it is. It's in like
Springfield.
Oh, that was it, Springfield. So that made me, I was fully expecting like they're going to make
that's
a
from the comic too.
Right, okay. I was fully expecting a Simpsons
before the Simpsons. That was fuck the Simpsons.
But they turn up and they're like, they've hidden so incredibly well in this fully abandoned town. And the mall is hiding Cobra Commander's base, and they're going to knock on the door by launching a hell of a lot of missiles at it, and they're going to get this final thing. And it goes again at hell of a pace. It's fine, but there's no one that goes, is anyone living in this town? Do the henchmen's families live in the houses that we're about to flatten? Like, is this like, I don't know. It just felt really like Duke is just like, fuck it, we're gonna kill everybody, and it just felt so sort of like, I was like, oh wow, this is like they don't care anymore. Like they've almost like GI Joe's become like a terrorist organization because all this is on American soil, and I was like, I'm really kind of like struggling. Like we've said before, roll things forward. What happens after? Like, I want to see almost like the congressional hearings that explain all this after.
Yeah, you basically nuked an American town. There were this many people living there.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you sort of saved the world, but was this the only way? Obviously it was in the movie, but
But it's done with extreme prejudice. Let's put it that way.
I mean, I think that this series basically obviously is not intended to have any sequels or anything. It's so weird that it existed at all. It obviously has remit to be as adult as it wants, basically. It's certainly as violent as it wants. And it gave us sort of like the first real attempt at doing that Arashikage stuff in live action or in a motion picture format. That stuff had not been adapted, previously. So Springfield is also from the comic. And the idea
is a Cobra base. As a Cobra base.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the idea is it's a nice, quiet Midwestern town. Of course, Springfield is the name. Every state has a Springfield, right? And Springfield is a nice, quiet Midwestern town that looks normal on the surface, but underneath is really a secret Cobra base. And it's all the like sleeper cell thing. Basically, like if you're raised in and it's in the TV show too, briefly, the cartoon show, not quite as successfully, but the idea is that it's like sort of it's all sleeper cells, In the comic, it's like, there's a video arcade and like, Dr. Venom or Dr. Mindbender has a lab underneath it and everything like, there are secret weapons dumps, yeah, there's secret, sort of like transforming elements, like you sort of see the secret X-Men style base, in
The
this.
floor opens and there's a big thing comes out and that sort of thing.
Yeah, all that
Yeah.
stuff goes back to the comic. And, you know, later on when they introduce the Crimson Guard are basically, you see those red uniforms in the 87 movie. Those Crimson Guard are basically sleeper cells in the comic. They're, people who have been surgically, had plastic surgery, and they have married and have families, but they're waiting to be activated. So this is like,
Wow.
it's mind-boggling.
Awesome. Yeah.
But Springfield has a long history with the franchise.
So it's in there.
Except here, they just don't have
Love
time
it.
to show any of those civilian things.
Yeah, this is where I was saying, like, this is where this pacing issue comes in, because they don't ask any questions, they just level it. Like, they turn up in like the what, basically like a helicarrier and a bunch of other things, just level it. Duke just says they know we're here, but we might as well knock on the door, and it's launched like an arsenal of things. Whole load of fighting ensues. It's all fine. I'm kind of missing Sergeant Slaughter at this point, but it's all good. But it comes down to like a weird confrontation between Duke and Cobra Commander. So Cobra Commander's like got himself in like basically a panic room, and he's like, "You can't get in here. It's bulletproof and so and so forth. It's got its own power source and all those other things." You're like, "Amazing, cool." So Duke sort of just leaves him.
Yeah, he shoots out the controls for the door,
Yeah, and then
so
leaves.
he can't get out. And then it's like, so the sort of like quick sort of like turnaround is that Cobra Commander sort of like brags, "Oh, you can't stop the firing sequence once it's activated, right? It's going to, I may be defeated, but this weapon is going
It's
to
still going to
destroy
happen.
another. It's going to destroy Washington, D.C. And so, like apparently you could change the target. You just can't stop it firing, right? The targeting sequence isn't locked. So, Duke's just like, right, I'm just going to have it aim right here.
Yeah.
And, let's get out of here. And now Cobra Commander's trapped. So,
Yeah,
I mean, it's whether you buy that or not, I mean, it's a quick little.
That's fine. It just ends very, very quickly. And then there's kind of like a weird voiceover that's sort of like, then they went back and Cobra Commander's cell thing wasn't there.
Yeah, it's been destroyed. Yeah, that weird kind of like voiceover ending, with a, typing on the screen. Like it is a very sort of like 30s style ending, right? Like they fly away, Springfield is destroyed. It's cool. But it's like there's no triumphant Yo Joe scene at the end. It's just like, by the way, we went back. Cobra Commander's really dead.
Yeah. What is it? Because the way I read it, the way I heard it was like, was it he was really dead, or was it because it was missing? So I assumed it meant like, oh, he may have escaped, or is it that he's died? I don't know, because it's so fast. I was like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna.
I read it, especially in the context of
Everything
this
else
version where they kill everybody. Destro and the Baroness are dead. Storm Shadow's dead. I mean, everyone's dead.
Mm-hmm.
I think, it's been destroyed by the blast. But you're right. I mean, you don't see the body. I mean, I guess that panic room could have, submerged under the ground, or turned
Teleported
into
to
a
Cobra
VTOL. Yeah, exactly.
It teleported to Cobra La in the last minutes of things. Yeah, but it does end very, very quickly. In the I was because the credits coming up, and I was like, oh, you've ended. Okay, like it's very, very quick.
Yeah, it's definitely a weak part.
Yeah, it's a weird this whole thing. I mean, you said it's considered. Yeah, this is considered quite highly. I think within certain GI Joe things, and it's not bad. Like I think the animation in this is cracking. I think I really enjoyed some of the scenes and stuff. I think the biggest issue is the pacing and some of the storytelling. But one of the things I sort of find with this is, like I say, it's unique in the sense that it's not given an out to lead to anything else. Like we are so, or I at least am so sort of indoctrinated into expecting things to be like,
It's got to
open-ended.
have the post-credit sequence that shows somebody's alive, and
Exactly.
there's a twist. We're setting up
Yes,
3 different sequels that we might not even do.
this is going to lead into a comic or a computer game or something else. There was a purpose to this other than just to kill everyone. Like, this is going to lead to something different.
A
And the
shared
fact,
universe.
yeah, like, yeah, it could be that like this massive blast actually disrupted the side of a mountain over the, and all of a sudden the Ark is revealed and then the Transformers are there. Like,
Yeah, or the Inhumanoids come out from underneath the earth,
exactly, like,
you know.
yeah, I was so expecting this to have that out that this is leading to that. But the fact that it doesn't and it's so definitively ended was kind of jarring. But that's more my expectation of sort of modern media than anything else. So I was kind of like, what was the purpose of this if it's not leading to a sequel or to a wider thing? But it doesn't have to. It's an end point. It is a kind of a Dark Knight Returns kind of thing, isn't it? Like, we're cleaning the house. Even that ends with a they're going off to do things. So
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, this is sort of a proof of concept.
mm,
Um, I think that yes, it's fast. Yes, it's, I mean, it's, a web series that was recut into a movie. Um, it's obviously been given carte blanche to do what it wants, and it's not gonna have anything else follow. I think that as somebody who loves GI Joe and
mm.
grew up with GI Joe, and most GI Joe fans sort of feel that GI Joe was not violent enough, characters didn't die, you
Use of
know,
laser guns and all that.
and especially on that cartoon show, I mean, any vehicle that explodes, you see everyone jumping out, and it's like it's a helicopter. You're gonna fly into the
Yeah.
rotors, How are you parachuting out of a helicopter?
I can't believe I
Um,
didn't mention that on the last episode when one of them starts the helicopter by pushing the rotor blades around and then rides the helicopter into battle like under the blades. Amazing. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, Chuckles is totally just like hanging off underneath those blades, firing a handgun,
Yeah.
and that helicopter, yeah, that's a Tomahawk. I mean, that's a heavy
Mm.
helicopter, and it crash lands and lands through goes through like 10 floors, and they all just climb out like they're totally fine. I mean, this is this kind of stuff that I don't think that GI Joe fans need GI Joe to be 100% realistic. I mean,
No, it's
this
not.
is
It's not
much more
Saving Private
James
Ryan.
Bond.
Yes.
Yeah, and the Resolute is basically James Bond level of unrealism, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's like here's this weird device. It's kind of it's based on quasi physics. It sort of makes sense. Um, Obviously there's going to be some sort of scientific, some sort of sci-fi element,
Mm.
but within a range of more realistic options than past versions. Um, it does the Arashikage stuff from Larry Hama's comics. It does, it's got, Springfield is putting these elements in, and it's violent and people die. And I think that this is sort of proof of concept. Yeah, it's short, it's low budget, but this shows you that you can do a G.I. Joe movie or revitalize G.I. Joe and do it right. And I think for fans like me who sort of, love the original stuff, but always felt the original had errors, had key
Mm.
errors in terms of, how its world had been constructed. This basically was the proof we were right all along that, you could this franchise still had life in it. Obviously the live action movie was just on the horizon, but that this franchise, you know, could be really great, and that if you did it the way basically we wanted, it could work as a sort of like balls to the wall, amazing, fun action military
Sci-fi
versus
action
terrorists.
adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I mean, I always regard this as kind of like a proof of concept in a way for the entire franchise. And I think in a lot of ways, it still has never recovered the heights of this movie. I think that like the taking the best elements from the different, from the comics and from different years, having those characters be very definitive versions of themselves. I mean, I would rather have Scarlet and Snake Eyes in a relationship, but I mean, this is really close to what fans want. And I think it's closer both in its realism and in its characterization than even the three live action movies we're going to talk about.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think you said about this as a proof of concept. I think I never knew of this, and I can see why. As again, as a fan, that you would say, "Oh, this is what I want." We definitely coming from an era, sort of again. I think the 2000s. This is what 2009. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you've just come off the back of Batman Begins, and you're gonna get the Dark Knight, and even like the Jason Bourne films, even Bond, and everything was trying to get to a more realistic kind of like the fantasy elements were being played down, or at least played in a darker way. Between 2001 and 2004, even the Ninja Turtles had a sort of a return to a much more sort of darker sort of tone in that series. I love that series. Like, it's again, it sort of really plays things out in a different way. So I can see that this is reaching along that kind of path. But what this is, I think that I can sort of see as well is, one of the things that's happened in the more recent years, and again, it's divided fans, but like they did similar thing with Masters of the Universe, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Like, Kevin Smith did it for Netflix, and they did like, oh, we're going to continue on from the TV series of the 80s, but we're going to sort of continue sort of like, there's a slight element of campiness, but like we're going to do it in a much more modern way with all these other things. And I feel like this feels a little bit of or precursor to that, sort of like I say, a proof of concept, saying like, oh, we can go back to those cartoons, and we don't have to do them in the way that we did in the 80s, but we can still keep some of the elements, but we can, modernize and do all that sort of thing. And so I think this works. I think this works incredibly well in that sense. And I wish that other things would have taken sort of note and gone down this path. Um, Again, I think, and unfortunately, because of the association with Warren Ellis, I think it's sort of, there's that element of it that has to be taken into consideration. But I do, as a writer, I am, as I stress that, as a writer, I like what Warren Ellis produced. I've liked a lot of his stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
even some of his manga, like he did Castlevania
Mm-hmm.
originally for Netflix, and like, that was
Anime, yeah.
the anime and I thought that was very good. Like that introduced me to that, so I like that sort of tone and stuff he's bringing into this. And I do kind of, this is one of the things where I do think they could have the thing we'll talk about for next week, obviously, is did this have any influence on the live action film?
No.
No, clearly not.
I mean,
Um,
the live action series were produced at a much higher level, right?
mhm.
And they're not going to look at what, you know, some web series was doing. I mean, if anything, the existence of that web series, um, I mean, it's a fluke. Even
Mm.
if that web series had not killed off everyone, it would not have been allowed to continue because been seen as
Interfered with the film.
interfering
Yeah,
with the franchise and film.
which is fine, but we'll see what we think of the film. But I thought this was good.
Yeah.
I thought this was good. I don't. I didn't. The problems I have with when it's good, it's good. The problems are the pacing and the fact that like it's only an hour. Like I only
Hmm.
gave this 2 out of 5 because I was like, this is so head spinningly fast. I can't link with it. Like, as a new fan, I can't attach to it.
Hmm.
If this was 25 minutes longer and had room to breathe, like I genuinely think this would be like I'd be giving it like another point and a half. Like it really has got some good ideas that just fly past, and you're just like, all right, that's that done.
I think what this proves is that, you can do GI Joe right.
Hmm.
It is great. It is a great property, that has been underutilized, but you have to find the right tone. And I think that, nobody wants this to continue. I don't think we want a revitalization of the original series, but I think that, a properly done, bring it in like this at a reasonable budget, and do it as an episodic series so it's got room to breathe. You can do, say, Springfield as an arc,
Mm.
or, a few episodes, instead of having to rush it in, 5 minutes. Um, and, but, take the handcuffs off. be able to really do a definitive adult version of this that's still fun.
This is where I think, Netflix and stuff, and some of those sort of, Amazon or even like Apple, less so, but some of those others have been able to step up with other franchises and have done things where they've gone, we're going to do this with the franchise and we're going to give it a chance. Like I said about the He-Man stuff on Netflix, like it was divisive amongst fans, but the animation's great. I kind of liked what I've watched. I watched all of it, but it was, it
I've watched
was,
all of it.
yeah,
And the storytelling's good,
yeah,
I mean, it is a love letter to everything that came before. I mean, if
mm,
anything, the biggest problem with the storytelling is that it honors all of the weird
yeah,
shit, and manages to put it all together Alan Moore Swamp Thing style into like a universe that makes sense.
mm. But then that's it. And they did the extension of like the Jurassic World
Hmm.
extension with Camp Cretaceous, and they've extended that, and that's all been really good. They even tried it with Pacific Rim, with a sort of an
Hmm.
anime series that actually I think is better than the second film. They've continued to do this, and I think Amazon have tried to do, have done this with like things like The Boys, where they sort of went, okay, we'll go off and do an anthology sort of weird animated thing with that as well, and then we'll have like Generation V. They've been able to do this stuff, and I do think, like you say, GI Joe seems like one of those franchises where it just seems to be waiting for a streamer or someone to go, oh yeah, no, we can give that a go, and we're going to do this thing now. Most recently, I think that's on hold because was it Beast Wars, the most recent Transformers live action film,
Rise of
ended.
the Beasts.
Rise of the Beasts ends
Yeah.
with a Joe stinger.
Yeah.
So we'll see if that goes anywhere. But
Yeah, I mean that's one of the worst movies ever made. I mean it truly is horrible. But I think that sort of Transformers G.I. Joe crossover, which has been talked about since
it's,
this era, right?
yeah,
Since
yeah, yeah.
2009 period. Um, kind of illustrates the point that I want to end on, which is that like in a great way, I don't think even the Transformers have had a project that was as clear to the tone or overall vision as this is to GI Joe.
Mm,
And part of the problem, yeah, I mean, Transformers have had some great stuff. I mean, there's great stuff in Prime. There's great stuff in animated. It's had some great. There, I think half the movies are good, half are pretty bad. But it's had ups and downs. But it hasn't really had a definitive version. The closest it's had is like the G1 cartoons, and they're pretty messy.
mm,
Um, G.I. Joe, this is probably still the closest it's had to a definitive version. Those original cartoons are messy. The live action stuff is a take on G.I. Joe. And I
mm.
think we keep getting these takes. I mean, there was the G.I. Joe Renegades where it's like they're on the run. Why are you starting with the characters on the run? Like, this is
Yeah.
like you're assuming that like we've all had, 10 GI Joe movies that we're used to, and now you're gonna change up the formula. There's been no definitive take to change up. And I think that both Transformers and GI Joe suffer from this. But
Mm,
just keeping to GI Joe, I mean, those movies, they each go in a different direction. We'll talk about them later. But, there really is no definitive GI Joe. There really is no definitive Transformers.
mm,
Um, and I think that I don't need the plot of this to survive. The plot is kind of incidental. But this idea of sort of taking the best elements, treating it maturely, treating it seriously, getting the characters right, this is what fans want. And I think that
mm,
fans like it because, just like fans of a novel, the stuff that worked for them is probably going to work for the mass audience. You need to keep it within a certain, you know, uh, spectrum of, adapting it as you need to, but get the characters right, get the basic plot right. Um, so, I mean, I have a lot of admiration for this. I think this is really a beacon for, it's not definitive, but for kind of trying to get the tone right. That the fact that you can do these as, adult, fun franchises works. And I think everything else is a take on G.I. Joe. a take on Transformers.
No, I'd agree with that. Definitely agree with that. And I think, and I appreciate that this is what fans want, and it's giving them what they want. I can see why it appeals to them as well, and sort of treat them seriously. It's given sort of credit and that sort of thing. It works on that front. Anyway, we shall wrap up there because did they take heed and apply these kinds of lessons to the movie that we're going to watch next week, GI Joe: The Rise of Cobra? We shall see. Anyway, that's what's coming next on the next episode. But for now, go Joe. Yo, Joe, indeed. Julian, thank you very much for joining me on this journey and for taking me through and explaining and being the sort of the keeper of the law in this case.
Yeah,
we'll see how next week goes for more questions.
I have all those old Action Force stories. I have to admit, but yeah, Britain was not as into Action Force.
No,
it was a little more forced.
Yeah.
Than
We'll
G.I.
see.
Joe
Yeah,
was.
well, we'll see. We'll see how I reacted to GI Joe: Rise of Cobra next week because I remember going to see it at the cinema. I still remember going to see this at the cinema. So, we'll see how that went. But for now, Julian, thank you very much, and ladies, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us on this journey.
It's a pleasure to be on 20th Century Geek again.
Yeah, across the spectrum. We this is for all. Everybody gets to hear this one. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and we shall see you on the next episode.